Hey guys, real simple video today on scope with Python, a real important concept to understand when building functions and navigating a file. So the basics of scope is we have scope. I want to call this zero indentations in, although scope isn't necessarily relative to the indentations, but it's one way to look at it. This global scope is accessible through any bit of this function, right? But this local scope, we have a variable here that says local, is not accessible outside of the function. So I have all these comments here, but let's go ahead and just remove the comments and let's streamline everything for a sec. So basically we have this global variable, and if I run this code, we can see both the local and global variable within the scope of this function here, but I won't be able to see the y variable outside of this function here. So if I try to print this, it'll actually break the code. So let's go ahead and actually run this as it is. So you can see we have global variable outside of the function. We can see it here, or excuse me, inside of the function. We can see it here, global. And then we can also see inside the function here, the local scope. But then this one is printing outside of the function. As mentioned, if I want to try to this local variable outside of the function, it will break the code. So let's see that, boom. Y is not defined, as you can see here. So I can't access this outside of the scope. This is particularly important when dealing with variables, and I think it speaks to a macro concept in engineering, just demonstrated in a micro concept. So the idea is we want to do less work with the same amount of data. So let's say we have some data here, and we have some more data here. Basically, if I want to point at, let's get all these print statements removed. But what I want to demonstrate is why global scope is important and why local scope is also important to differentiate from global scope. So as mentioned, it speaks to a macroeconomic concept to programming. If I build another function here and say return x, and we can also say return y plus x. In fact, let's make these integers instead of strings here. So I'll say 1. And this will be 2. The point is here we can have multiple functions that point at the global scope if we need to change the variable. So let's say we're building some data of a leaderboard or something. Maybe we're building a gaming, and here we could say, well, let me go ahead and comment it. I'll say gaming data or something. And maybe this variable, instead of it being x, is like maybe achievement XP or leaderboard. Let's see, like leaderboard XP, and maybe it's 100. So perhaps if some gamer in this virtual game that we're somewhat building, if they make it on the leaderboard, they get an additional XP or something, right? So we'll say additional XP, and maybe we'll say return. We'll say demonstrate XP, right? We'll say another XP function, right? Now these things aren't particular to the functions. I'm just kind of coming up with names on the fly. But let's say this y variable isn't a y variable. It's actually current XP, and maybe the current XP is 50, maybe 500. And the point is here we can actually use this global scope variable in multiple different functions, and we don't have to maintain it in other functions. So if I go ahead and run this now, we should see all this go over swimmingly. So demonstrate scope. Oh, it's not a line anymore. So we need to redefine our functions. But and I need to Python run file in terminal. So I'll go ahead and do that. As that's running for us, I just want to point out the fact that here it goes. Give it a sec. Python, it should be running here. Oh, we need to print it. Okay. So the point I'm trying to say though is we don't need to maintain this in multiple areas. We only need to maintain this leaderboard XP, if you will, in one area. So whatever the data is, let me go ahead and run the file. So boom, we could see leaderboard XP and then the additional XP here. So whatever the data is that you might need, instead of having to maintain it multiple functions, so let's pretend we're building a really robust file and we have 50 of these functions. We'll say say one more. It'll make sense in a moment. So I'll say one more XP function, right? And maybe this represents something else, of some experience points that you're building in your application or your data. And instead of us having the variable local, so we define it in every one of these, this requires 3 times the maintainability now. So every time any changes happen, let's say for whatever reason you want to change this XP variable to a different number, you now have to go to 3 different places and change that. Now, fortunately with VS Code, you can make that really easy by doing something like this, but but you still have to watch that across your entire project and your entire file. So this kind of speaks, this global and local scope. I know it's only relative to one file here, but this idea of keeping all your data in pointing all of your variables to one global scope can actually be a really, really useful software engineering concept, where now if I need to change something, I just need to change it in one spot instead of 3 different spots, or it could be very, very, very many more depending on the robustness of the build you're making. So that's a little bit about the inside scoop of local and global variables. And then the inverse is also true. You might only want this current XP variable or something only relative to this specific function for whatever reason that might be. You may want it to be private for a specific reason. So there's reasons to do both, but that's just a bit on global data and local data. So I hope that's useful. And we'll say demonstrate scope again. We'll put that back. I just wanted to show you guys a bit about scope in Python. So I hope that's useful. For some reason it's not running here. It should be running. There it is. There's our data. And yeah, so I hope that was helpful. Thank you for watching.